was expressing to a few people that I've talked to, I feel a little like a fish out of water here. I can barely spell semantics. I rely on other experts and other expertise in order to help me out. What I want to talk today about and give a case study on, my background and my firm is Fred Wergeles and Associates. We do competitive intelligence. We do market intelligence. A lot of folks talk about that. The one thing that I really hadn't heard here was a deep understanding about the competition. A lot of you talk about helping your clients proactively with marketing, with getting the message out, and that's all very positive. But nowhere along the line did I hear anybody talking about what the competitors were going to do. The question I typically ask my clients, excuse me, what I typically ask my clients is, do you reasonably expect your clients to stand idly by while you go in and eat their lunch? And the answer is invariably no. And they say, okay, what are your competitors going to do to respond to any of your actions? How are they going to respond to the actions that you take? And so that's kind of the part of the market that I take care of. We've been doing this for many years. We work with folks that are in strategic planning, in marketing, product development, and the marketing and sales, actually trying to help companies win business by a better understanding of their competition. And I'll talk about again a case study where that was able to help a vice president of business development help his company win business. As far as my background, again, I'm not from your tribe in doing the analytics and the semantics. My world has been intelligence, and the way that you can tell an intelligence officer is when you see flowers, we're looking for the funeral. We're always looking at the other side of the coin and really trying to look at information in different ways in order to gain insight about what the competition is doing, and always thinking of how to beat them at their own game. It's interesting. When Richard was talking about his 5-step approach, and I started looking at my slides at the same time, and it almost mimics what I have here, and they're very much in parallel, only focused in different areas. We start with a set of representative key questions. What are the key topics that are affecting our clients, which range in industry, but they're again typically people in marketing and sales. And the CEOs are asking questions about the competitive market environment. So we start with a set of key questions. We typically don't start with a lot of unknowns, so we know what we're focused on. And what we do is we collect a lot of information. Again, very, very similar to the work that you do. The analysis that we conduct is looking at the competition, is looking at new technologies, is looking at understanding the market trends in order to be able to find the white space for our clients. So we're looking at emerging technologies, competitor activities. We look a lot at regulatory issues. That's another area that we typically focus on. And where intelligence meets the road, the difference between information and intelligence is it has to be tied to an action, a decision made by someone within a company that once they have this type of information, they're able to make a more informed decision. So let me talk a little bit about a case study. I was doing work for a construction manager for a large construction firm who is looking to make inroads into a new territory. And the important thing that he told me, and again, a little difference in the worlds that we live in, is he said, Fred, you got to fly below the radar screen. You can't let anybody know what we're doing because we haven't quite entered that market yet. So the interesting thing from his perspective is, who are the key decision makers in building a school in a local community? Who are the key decision makers? Who are the influencers? And it was important to him to know that because they were going to try and not only talk with them and support them, but it also involved the politics, the local politics that was involved. And again, in any sort of community, there's a lot of local politics that they would have to navigate. So he wanted to know who the decision makers were, who were the staffers, even at that level, who were the staffers that were helping to make that decision and facilitating that decision. And how are the competitors planning to bid? What did they do in the past? Who were they trying to influence? And what were the relationships between all of that? So when we started gathering all the information, again, the process that we use is what we call the intelligence cycle, where we are looking at what is needed, determines what and how we're collecting. So we don't collect all the data. Unlike a lot of the discussions that was going here, where we'll take all the data, almost boil the ocean, and we'll use the tools that you have in order to sift it out. In order to be most efficient and most effective to our clients, we need to go in and know exactly what kind of data they want and be able to go and target that data to do that quickly and effectively. So determining what we need and how much of that information to collect drives us into what we need to do and what information we need to collect and who do we need to get that information from. And then after that, we apply the analytical tools and obviously the reporting leading to a particular decision. So in our case here, our information needs, we need to find out who the municipal leaders are, who their staff personnel are, who's on the school board, I mean down to these types of levels, and who the competitors are and how they're related to the subcontractors and to the Board of Education and the political leadership in a particular municipality. So we start saying, okay, where do you go to find that kind of information? Obviously, we can talk to people in town. There's a lot of published information. We used information from on campaign contributions in the past, the connections, the political connections there. I actually went to the municipality and talked to people in the construction management offices of the municipality to get information from them. There's municipal documents. It's helped, by the way, over the number of years with all these sunshine laws, where a lot of the municipal documents are available to the public. Some of it is online, a lot of it isn't. So I had to go and actually Xerox and make copies of some of the information and then feed that information in. I talked to journalists. We talked to some of the municipal employees to get some of that and get a flavor for what's going on the ground. Once we had all this information, though, one of the things that becomes very difficult from an analytical standpoint is trying to make sense out of it all. I've had a long-time relationship with Brooke Aker from Expert System, and I presented this to him, and I said, how do we take this data and be able to cut it and slice it and dice it in different ways in order to be able to gain some insight, and how can we find especially the non-obvious connections between individuals with all this information. And so he pulled together a program for me, and again, this may be too small to see, but what we wanted to do is focus on particular influencers and particular decision makers and how they were all connected. And while this may not seem pretty, from an analytical standpoint, it's very, very helpful. Again, one of the things is being an intelligence officer, you don't have to worry about fancy graphics. No, the clients never expect fancy graphics. After all, we're just, intelligence pukes, But the important thing, and the data that we were able to extract from this is very important. We're able to go and put any individual in the center and analyze and manipulate the data to say that person's at the center of the world. Who does this individual know, and how deeply, what's the level of connection? And so what you have here is a lot of different numbers and all that, but basically in the yellow box you have the frequency, the number of times that one individual was mentioned in the same article or the same document as another individual. And the other important factor is what we call the distance, how closely they were mentioned in the same article by characters. So what you have in the blue box are the numbers, are the number of times that individual was mentioned in the corpus of the data that we had. And then the connections between the individuals. And it's also important, we were talking about 80% reliability. I've talked to a lot of folks in information technology, the IT world, and a lot of the developers want to be able to give you the perfect solution, the 100% solution. As an analyst, I deal in ambiguity all the time. And what I'm looking for is a tool that can get me most of the way there quicker than anybody else. And be able to take that information and analyze it. I can deal with the ambiguity, and I just wanted to point out one thing here in the red. We have two people here. It says Marsha H. Jordan and Jordan. Now, you'd say, well, we're not really sure what we're talking about with Jordan, but in the context, those are the same people. To me, I'll make the assumption that it's the same person. They were mentioned just as their last name in a number of articles, 4 articles, and by her actual name in 2 articles. So I can deal with that ambiguity. Similarly, all the way at the side, it says Joseph in a box. Now, is that Joseph somebody or somebody Joseph? Again, given the context and the analysis that we were doing, it didn't really make any difference. It also didn't make very much difference because they were only mentioned once. And so what I'm looking for is strong connections and a number of times. For example, here the frequency is 3, the distance is 6, so very close. Alston and Davis are tight. So again, the whole idea was to look for connections between people and who might be influencing the decisions. Similarly, one of the problems that we're also facing is how individuals were connected to organizations. So I went back to Brooke, said, okay, now let's start looking and change the question a bit and say, how can we get the individual at the center and what organizations may be influencing him as well? And so I had to modify this just a little bit in the nature of the confidentiality. But basically what we did is we said, okay, how closely were individuals related to different organizations as far as what they could do to influence the outcome of a particular RFP and a bid process for a school. So we were able to look for people-to-people connections. We were able to pull the information in a different way and look at people and organization connections. And the results is we were able to identify a number of not only obvious but non-obvious connections between individuals and organizations. For example, we were able to go and determine, based upon information that we had from resumes and backgrounds, that 20 years prior to this analysis, there were 2 individuals that had worked at the same consulting firm, many years ago, and that was a non-obvious. Unless you read the resumes, read the bios and everything, you would be able to make that connection. With this software that was developed for us, we were able to go and make those connections very quickly because people were connected, and you said, well, how were they ever connected? Because they were in 2 different organizations. So we were able to investigate that further and determine that in fact that 2 individuals that were very influential, one competitor and somebody on the school board, had a 20-year relationship going back. We were also able to determine, in some cases, whose brother-in-law, somebody on the school board, their brother-in-law worked at a particular competitor construction firm. And so we were able to note that and be able to provide that to our client. And we were also, one of the big concerns in the construction industry is who the subcontractors are and the requirement in this particular municipality to use minority and women-owned organizations. So we were able to determine which of their competitors were linked with particular subcontractors that would have fulfilled that obligation on the part of the municipality as far as being able to do that. So they knew also who else to partner within the organizations. So with that, I'll open up to questions and answers. Anything about the flip side of the work that you all are doing very well? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there were a couple of things that my client did. One is it gave them a better idea when it came time to contribute and support certain local politicians and school board members, basically who to send their money to and gain influence with. The other part of it is that we were able to combine this information with other information we had about the competitors in order to help them formulate their bid. By better understanding what their competitors were going to do, how they've bid in the past, it was able to help them, and the connections that they had, how would they prepare their RFP. They competed on 4 different projects, and they won one of them, which is typically the way that they did, is that, you know, they kind of dole them out, but they were able to win one of the projects. Yeah. Another question? Yes.
Yeah, quick question. You said that for most things, people want to go in knowing the information they're looking for. Is it a problem to know what information exists, or is it abundant enough that you just know it exists? You just have to find it?
No, from my perspective, going into a project, I need to know 2 things from my client. One is what are their key questions? What are they concerned with? And number 2, if I gave them the information in their mind that was the perfect information, what would they do with it? And so those are the 2 key requirements that I need in order to effectively do that. Now, sometimes it changes and sometimes they're a little more ambiguous, but those are the 2 keys that I'd like to know.
But is discovery of whether information exists or not ever an issue for you, or is it?
Once they tell me what they want, it's up to me to go find it. And that part of the discovery and determining where we could go for information and where, that's kind of one of our initial processes, an analytical process in determining where that information might reside. You know, whether it's in somebody's head, whether it's in some documents, whether it's in the newspapers, trade journals. We need to do that first part of the collection of the information. Yeah. They were going into even though it was a fairly large school system, it was fairly insular. And so what they wanted to know is how insular, did they even have a chance? That was the biggest thing. Do they want to spend their resources bidding for contracts that have already, you know, tacitly been doled out already? I mean, that was one of their key questions. Do I even want to go and bid on this? Or is it all fixed? I don't want to say fixed. Wired with a small W, you know, and no, there was no malfeasance, but it's very interesting as you start putting all this stuff together about seeing who's connected to who and how that plays out, because they attended my client attended a lot of meetings, and it seemed like they were treating some contractors more harshly than others as far as questioning their capabilities, and others were given, you know, kind of a free pass. And so that was part of the issue.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.